Today, I am joined by Matthew Peterson. Matthew is the president of New Founding and the founder of the American Mind. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be on this podcast. It's one of the most interesting ones.
Oh, thank you, thank you. It's been a long time coming. I have to say the same about your podcast at the American Mind. I've mentioned it many times on this podcast. It's one of the ones that I never miss. The round table. Please do listen to the round table from the Claremont Institute. You're an occasional guest, often guest, maybe permanent guest. I don't know exactly.
Yeah, well, I was on basically all the time, but then I created New Founding with my co-founder here in Dallas. So I'm on about once a month. I think I'm supposed to be on. So,
Yeah,
in
that's
fact,
what I felt
today
that
I
you were
need to.
missing.
Yes, today I realized I need to go back on. It's been a little while, and it's fun to. I miss talking to the guys.
Yeah, it's a very good one because it's kind of like it's a round table. It's a roundup of a lot of things that have been going on in our sphere and outside, and it's got some really great commentary from the likes of Spencer Clava and James Poulos, who've been on this podcast as well, and everyone at the Wonderful American Mind. So um, I there's a phrase that keeps coming up whenever I look into your work, and it's this concept of no neutrality. You've written about this. I mean, what does no neutrality mean in the context of what's coming up for people on our side?
Well, I mean, first let me set a bit of context. Like, think about your, Joe Rogan listener, your kind of sports fan, American, male or female. Like, what's the kind of mass audience of people who flirt with talking about politics, but not really? Because let's face it, most people are not very online, and most people are not thinking about politics to the extent that some of us do. In that context, there's a lot of people who are trying to maintain a kind of neutrality, and some of it's just ignorance. Like, I don't want to pay attention to that stuff. I don't really need to. Politicians suck. Leave me alone. And so, as an individual, if that's where people are at, there's no neutrality because they're not going to leave you alone. They're not going to leave your kids alone, and that's what we're seeing. People waking up every day right now, realizing, I can't ignore this stuff anymore. What happened in the last 2 years really accelerated people's understanding of this fact that they're not going to leave you alone. And there's this lie, post World War II liberalism, that all these structures can be neutral, that they can be apolitical in a way, when of course they can't be. I mean, and no one in the early American Republic would have thought that for a second. I mean, it's kind of crazy, right? That you think that schools will be neutral, or the business can be neutral even. And so, when it comes to those who are involved in revenue generating entities, they've also imbibed this lie and pretended, and the right, of course, maybe just as worse than the left, has pretended that you can be businesses neutral is about providing goods and services to people. But the problem is that what people want and desire isn't neutral, and what you influence them, when you influence their desires, that's not neutral either in terms of the good or what's actually good and evil. And when you think about advertising itself in the last century, the complaint by smarties on the right and left was always mass media creates advertising as we know it, which alters people's desires, right? So they start wanting things they didn't know they wanted. And when you start messing with desire like that, you can make things that are evil appear good, and good appear evil. And you're going to influence people's behavior in ways that are not neutral at all, right? So it was never neutral. Advertising was never neutral. It's based on one way of life being better than another. And it's not purely materialism either. There's always virtue signaling going on. That's human nature. So you can't scrub out, the good from these things. That's just the big picture. Where we are now, though, is for business, especially for products, for the entire economy and for our culture, they will not leave you alone. This is a cultural imperialism. The woke religion demands that no other gods before it. If there are other gods, they have to bow down to it, right? And so they're not going to leave you alone. And if you're in a situation where you declaring neutrality, which is where people are, whether they realize it or not, this is what they're slowly coming to realize in business. You're in a situation where your declaration of neutrality is considered war, right? Is considered opposition. by the wokeness, then what benefit is it to you? You're going to be attacked anyway. So ultimately, what you need is to positively plant a flag in a different direction, right? In a positive, I think, movement for a more human way of life that stands. It's a broad coalition that stands against um, this madness. And so people aren't there yet. They don't even see what that positive vision might be. But I do think they're realizing they can't remain neutral. If that makes sense.
Yeah, this seems to be also kind of a point of cleavage between kind of the old right and what is now the new right. It's essentially we don't agree on "Don't Tread on Me." I think that's kind of slowly phasing out. I mean, do you're kind of more obviously more involved in the politics on the ground in America. Do you see that friction with libertarians, kind of the old school fusionists, becoming something important?
Yeah, I mean, so I want to preface this by saying, like, I mean, we have to define what we mean by libertarian first, right? But let's say we mean someone who, yeah, thinks all this stuff should be neutral. Freedom is always good in any way, shape, or form. Government exists to allow people to be free and make their own choices, and yada yada yada. And I mean, they're good for some things. Like, I think they're right about the administrative state. They're right about, kind of Rand Paul is right about a lot of things, and he's very much, his name is Rand for a reason. So I think that there's sometimes practical overlap with people who are card carrying libertarians on policy issues in a coalition, right? So I don't go, that's just a fact. And I agree with them on a lot of things. Like foreign policy, I think a lot of libertarians have they've been saying some good things. But fundamentally, it's been a virus that's that's negatively impacted the right when it comes to the idea that you can shy away from moral claims or claims of justice in politics. And that's where that larger sense of libertarian is that's been a real problem, and I think that that's just fading away. I mean, because it's not natural, it's not real. You can't you can live in a fantasy world for a while, but eventually the walls come crashing down. What you think is just, what you think human nature is, what you think good and evil are, what you think the purpose of people are. These are things that if you fundamentally disagree on, you cannot live as one polity together. This is fundamental political philosophy 101. This isn't some wild, I mean, half the time I think all the online right is just, they think they're really cool saying these things. It's like, well, yeah, Aristotle actually said that, thousands of years ago. It should be a commonplace. I get it, it's edgy now, but what they're saying is so that crap crazy that this becomes like edgy dissent. So that you can't scrub justice or the good out of politics. And I think that the recognition every day now, like millions of people are sort of moving to that point where they realize what's really important, and these lies or this rhetorical like smokescreen is fading away, especially if they're younger.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that seems to be the case with like you said, younger people. I've I went to a conference recently. I was invited to speak, surprisingly, and there were a lot of very young people, like the kind of the the there were two types of attendee. Older in this case, it was in Europe, so kind of bureaucrat types, and
Hmm.
then the younger people were very very much. I mean, probably very online because everyone is nowadays, but they're also very. Yes, they were very much on board with the ideas of the online right, and they're very energized to do something in the real world, in the sense of just either organizing or, like you said, participating economically in some form of venture that enshrines these values that are not the values of the regime. So yeah, I think I'm pretty hopeful for at least the 20 or 30 people that I met, but I'm sure that that's just the tip of the iceberg, because there is a lot of energy. I mean, there's been a lot of pieces, and there's that recent Vanity Fair piece, surprisingly fair piece as well, about the new right, and there's quite a lot of energy. And Elon Musk has bought Twitter, which is an interesting, which you've actually described as an act of statesmanship. I mean, could you elaborate why is that the buying of Twitter an act of statesmanship?
Well, that goes to the no neutrality bit, right? I mean, in a situation in which I mean, since this is the subversive podcast, I'll say something I don't tweet, which is since we're in a situation where democratic politics have broken down, um, and in reality, it's very difficult if you're in politics to be a statesman. One can say it's almost impossible. I don't think it's impossible, but it's very difficult in the way the system is set up now to actually act for the sake of the common good with real power as a member of Congress, for instance. I mean, Congress is a dysfunctional body that has nominal oversight at this point. I mean, the best they can do is publicize things. Maybe. I mean, they don't pass laws really anymore. So in that situation, which I will say uh, is oligarchic. I mean, if you've already your regime form has already changed into a sort of oligarchy, then all of a sudden the statesmanship you need is going to come from the wealthy if they're going to move in the right direction, and that would be aristocratic in the best sense if they're actually excellent or doing something that's really for the good of the people. Traditionally, they would call that an aristocracy. Of course, that has a bad rap in our country. But the idea would be that you've almost forced statesmanship out of politics um, by virtue of the way in which the regime is morphed. So now you're in a situation where in business is where you can actually influence things and actually influence politics, because of course if they're all going to be very small minded money grubbers in politics. I mean, all they want is like $5 million in assets and some restaurants where maybe people kind of know their name and a couple nice vacations. I mean, they don't have like deep and lofty desires for glory. If those are the clowns in charge, then you can tell them what to do. If you are a business titan or a cultural titan who creates kind of cachet and prestige that they desire, and so in Musk's case, I mean, it's impossible to imagine for me the federal government as it presently is constituted actually going after, say, Google, right? Or these companies who are transforming the public square and manipulating people's minds. On the other hand, the one place where you could still do it is if you're Elon Musk, literally the richest man in the world. So, and even then, I'm not sure if he can actually buy Twitter. I'll believe it when it happens. I assume it's happening. Very happy about it. But even then, like that's how powerful these forces are. So you look at this. The only people who have actual power, they are the ones who then can become statesmen. And that's the situation. And in that situation, in the walks Elon Musk, who wants to do these very bold but kind of physical, tangible, visceral, practical things, right? Like traffic underneath the ground will fly high up to Mars, and so he's doing those things. That's very different than Twitter, right? It's a completely different entity. The reason he wants to do it is because of something that relates directly to the common good in a more ethereal way. And in this environment, that's an act of statesmanship, and that's what I would say where people should focus much more attention on, because to me, that's more powerful than most political positions in America or in any other Western country.
And there was a Curtis Yarvin piece about, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 months ago. Essentially, I don't know, it was entitled something like "Big Tech Has No Power" or something like that. It was using the example of Mark Zuckerberg to illustrate that even he is kind of under the sway of kind of the woke behemoth that he controls, like essentially that middle management and all these people very animated by the woke ethos are in charge of his company. So even if you wanted to change tax, it does feel to me like Elon Musk is a different kind of animal. Like he really does not care. And I think the challenge now is to see if he can really pull it off. Like if
Mhm.
his power actually translates into things in the real world. I mean, he's making the rockets, but the rockets, I guess, are not dependent on woke middle management as much, or maybe they are. I don't know what the nitty gritty is, but yeah, there's something there. I mean, it seems like the vibe has shifted to
Mhm.
allow something like this to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I take this point from Curtis probably more seriously than a lot of his other points. I mean, I think he's got real insight here, and I think the way to think of these men is often as a captive, beleaguered. I mean, just look at Jack on Twitter. I mean, the guy
Mhm.
seems like someone who's do you feel in charge? I mean, he doesn't seem like someone who was ever in charge in a way. Um, Musk is different just because of, first the wealth level, but also he was running companies that were not taken over by this nonsense. That's actually notable, right? I mean, does anyone really? I mean, I'm sure there's people of all different kinds and beliefs, in his companies, but it doesn't come up, does it? And I think that he knows, I mean, he's not just building something where people blather all day, right? I mean, he's building real stuff that has to do real things in physics and in the time and space and in the physical reality. And so he knows um, that if this craziness gets its way, his identity politics gets its way, he won't go to Mars, right? I mean, he will not be able to have innovate and find talent and elevate it. So he's clearly against that, and he's kept it out of his companies. And so I think he's in a truly different position. Now, on the other hand, I'm sure that he's got some things he's beholden to, right? For instance, he doesn't talk about China very much. Um, but man, I forgive him. I mean, he's not. He's not. It's. I don't know what the forces will be for him, but I think it's definitely true that he's in a very different situation than um, than someone who's CEO of the company, and that's a different. I mean, they're beholden. In many cases, like with Jack, they don't actually own very much of the company. That's a very different scene. And then when you're dealing with both China, in the case of Twitter, and the intelligence community, and so much is at stake. Curtis's point, which I just think is true, is like the right they don't even come close to having that kind of power. Like, why would Jack ever give a crap about what you have to say? You don't even. He's dealing with, God knows what, and hands around his neck that are much more powerful than a lot of people on the right could possibly imagine. So I think, but here's the thing. I think right now you see three guys in the last month come out, and it's really remarkable and it's historic. And most of our commentary is retarded, and people don't even bring it up or talk about it. Peter Thiel comes out in April, I think it was April 7th, at the Bitcoin conference in Miami, basically declares war on big finance. I mean, just like talking about Warren Buffett being a geriatric sociopath, whatever. I mean, just went off. One of the most belligerent things he's ever said. I think it's like a declaration of war, revolutionary youth movement that needs to break down all of the this stuff. He's speaking against woke corporations. It's kind of unhinged, right? He's like off the chain, and I don't know why that didn't get more attention. It did get attention, but that was pretty amazing, and it was in the context of Bitcoin, maybe, so it limited it. But that was a very remarkable statement, kind of a declaration of revolution or war, politically and culturally. And then you go to Mark Andreessen, who all of a sudden, right? I mean, is not only taking red pills for breakfast, apparently he's giving them out. I mean,
Yeah,
talking
it's
about the
Burnham
current thing.
posting intensely.
Yes, he's just schizo posting, and it's marvelous, and it's very interesting, right? Because A16Z has hired Catherine Boyle, who's talking about American dynamism and how we do need to bring supply chains back and invest in America. Um, Mark wrote that Time to Build piece a few years back. It's become more belligerent, a little bit more tied in politically and culturally, and against the current thing, right? As he would say. And then you add on top of that what's happened last month with Musk, who's completely off the handle, like just off the chain, right? On Twitter, responding to people you would never dream he'd respond to, saying what you would. So what's going on there? I don't necessarily know that all these people are all in agreement about everything. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that they're in agreement, certainly with everything on the right, old right or new right. Um, but I do think that this kind of statesmanship is almost forced upon them. Because if you're in a situation where you can do this and you start to realize how bad things are, um, some people have either from nobility or self-interest are going to start saying these things.
Yeah, I think there's also an aspect of realizing that there is power to be had. I think there, the idea that we have a right to rule. I think it hasn't occurred to many that the crown of France is lying in the dirt and it can be picked up with whatever implement one might find at his disposal. So it's yeah, it's one of those things. I feel like more and more people who have kind of new right inclinations are realizing that taking initiative in the real world is might be easier than you think, if you actually do it
Mm.
instead of being afraid to do it, because obviously the backlash could be immense.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Um, to give the base example, the low example of commerce, right? I mean, anyone with three brain cells that aren't fighting each other should be able to realize that there's millions of consumers who don't want to buy products and services from people who hate them. And that's something where um, it's not only grift, though. This is actually how we change things, right? And that's people realize that. They realize that there's this vacuum politically, and once you get over your kind of grief for what you thought America was or America as it was, and then you just practically look around, absolutely. And I have to say this is also the game, the danger. What happens in these situations is that everyone wants a great leader. That person usually isn't the person you want them to be, and the race is always a few good men out there in the midst of the madness, and a number of others who's doing it for the right reasons, and who's going to be able to create something that's greater than themselves, and not just make it about themselves, so the whole thing falls apart afterwards. I mean, these are all kinds of things that it's kind of themes you can see kind of developing. But yeah, I think so. I think that there's a good kind of desire for fame or glory that's natural, that can be harnessed for good, when people realize that their um, their ambition can be tied to actually serving the common good of a community. That's healthy. That's how you harness these things. Taming it is always a problem, and so I mean, yeah, the race is on, and it's only going to increase as more and more people realize what's going on. I mean, look at our president, for guys. That guy can barely get through a sentence, and you're looking around, going, "Wait a minute, this is a free for all." And in the midst of that, people, either because of self interest or otherwise, are going to jump in. And ultimately, that's a good thing, because I think it's the only way. The only way out is through, as I like to say.
Yeah, yeah, it is scary, being at knowing what time it is, and also seeing this early signs of what some might call collapse, showing themselves. There's there's definitely going to be a lot of creative destruction in the process. It's not going to end up glorious for many people, and it's probably there's going to be a lot of pain. I mean, there's a lot of pain already. Inflation, that's already pain. The pain of collapse of a certain type of financial superstructure. There's pain in all of the social dysfunction that's been left to fester in the wake of all the things that are going wrong. So from fentanyl to homelessness to Europe has just millions of people displaced from other places that are creating like there's that recent article by Malcolm Schoon and Compact about what's going on in Sweden now. Sweden is pretty much a war zone at the moment. There are things are happening in reality that are already. If you would have teleported someone back here from, I don't know, the 50s, they'd probably be thinking, okay, there are real problems here. Is this a dystopia? Maybe. So it's things are happening, unfortunately. So yeah, what comes next? What is from your perspective, kind of a positive vision of the future in the U.S. Obviously, because that's your domain. But what would in 10 years? What would a good outcome from everything that's going on now look like?
I can imagine a lot. I think we need to imagine a lot more than we do. Um, well, first, let's say, how do you develop this vision of the future, and then maybe we can point at it a little bit. I mean, America's always been pretty good at casting a vision of the future, and thrived on it to some degree. Um, kind of unrequited desire that channeled the wrong way leads to a lot of stupidity and ugliness, and channeled the right way leads to some of those beautiful, glorious, captivating, kind of stories the world knows. And Americans aren't even aware of this power, especially today. There's a lot of negativity, right, about where we are, and it seems dystopian. But you really think about, well, what the hell is going on when, the czar is out in the middle of the country shooting buffalo with Bill Cody. I mean, people like loved they loved this aspect of America that was forward facing. And you hear Musk talk about it, you hear Thiel talk about it. I think the problem is it's a little too technocratic when they talk about it. Like we need innovation. They promise flying cars, and brilliant guys, and what they're saying is true. But we don't have. I haven't seen yet a kind of, I hate the word sick. Academic uses it, but academics use this word, right? But a kind of substantial, colorful, human, religious, theological, political vision of what the future should be. The people on the right generally just complain and they talk about decline, but nothing's inevitable. Nothing is inevitable in history and in life, and there are millions of people who are not down with the program right now. So I would say in 10 years, I would say even sooner than that, this is what I am actively trying to foster, foment, guide, and lead, is a movement that is pro-human as opposed to transhuman, that is pro-tech in the service of humanity, and not in the service of enslaving us to AI and the demons or whatever. I mean, so I don't think that's a broad-based coalition, right? I mean, do you want to be more human, excellence as a human? And think about who the coalition is, and I'll say a few seconds about what this might look like, and then I'll be quiet. But the coalition there are people out there who are Christian, are traditionally religious in some way, who need to be called to greatness, who need to realize that they should be leading. The city on the hill for American exceptionalism that everyone always complains about, it was a warning to the people of New England, a warning that frankly they needed because they did something that's amazing that most modern people could not do, which is be ported to a shore like that and build a community without ripping each other apart. And I mean, it's amazing what they did, right? How'd they do that? Because they were religious. They had a mission, and they knew that people were watching them. They were the city on the hill. And if they failed, they would become a byword among the nations. They would disgrace themselves and their God. That was the real point of it. It wasn't, oh, shining America. It was Winthrop saying to the early Puritans, like, you were like which Christ says in the New Testament, you are the city on the hill. You can't be hid. It's right where he talks about the bushel and persecution. So the Benedict option, as it were, right, is half true. Like, you should congregate with people to live a way of life that is virtuous, that is wholesome, that is excellent. But when you do that, you are light. Well, where the hell is the city here? Because we do see a dystopia. And aren't there millions of people who go to church every week who actually are trying to follow their faith in some way? What the hell are you doing? Why don't you rebuild the city? And if you did do that, what would it look like? Then there's people who value human excellence, who are elite in a good sense of the word. And they realize that this other stuff, even if they're not religious, is ugly and goes against talent, innovation, and they rebel against it. And they say, you know what, I can, I kind of overlap with Christian morality. Basically, there's some natural virtue we agree on, and they're also looking around. There's your Thiels and Musk a little bit maybe, but there's a lot of people like that who are professionals, talented. They want to get out of these blue chip companies. It's a hellhole. They want to be part of something that's more wholesome, exciting to them, a decent way of life. And then there's the people who are young and lost. Number three, are kind of very online souls, people who have seen the dystopia. They know what it's like and how bad it is. And there's the lost boys and girls of the world, and they're looking for something new and interesting, and they know they got to get out. And then lastly, I would call it the kind of libertarian impulse, people who just want to be left alone, right? Those are the constituent groups. I just avoided your question, but those are the constituent groups. And I think from there, if you start thinking about what those people could do if they moved in consolidated power by moving geographically and digitally into the same spaces to just live a way of life to be happy. It's like, is that subversive? Like, they just 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 to be happy, to have a decent family and marriage, to have decent schools for your kids, to pool together with other people in ways where you can have meaningful work, where you can be engaged with your community in some meaningful way. If they just do that, all of a sudden, I think some possibilities open up. But it may be that they won't do that unless there's a bold vision presented to them.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds wonderful, but is it possible without some form of national divorce, or essentially a regional splitting of people who might not want these values, might not agree with you?
So yeah, so and that's a very important question, obviously. But here's what I'd say: I don't think that, in a way, it matters. It matters greatly, obviously, in some way, because the only way out is through. Whether or not there's some kind of separation or divorce or whatever, and that's the best way forward. The only way to win, if this country is not to fall apart or devolve into sort of a factionalism, is to consolidate power in the way that I just described.
Hmm.
So, if it really is the case that you are not allowed to live this good way of life, even though millions of people are moving to Texas and Florida every day, and in Nashville, right, to do so, then okay, that's fine. But let's try the experiment first, where people are just realizing I can't just stay where I am anymore. I have to move, right? I have to go somewhere else. Now that's actually happening. No one's talking about it, but there's no doubt. Like, Texas is reddening, Florida is reddening. Now there
Hmm.
are millions of people pouring across the border, of course, but it's this is really happening, and they just redistrict the hell out of both states. I mean, the right did, and you can see even Greg Abbott. This is very different than in the past. Someone like Greg Abbott, more of an establishment Republican, right? He's saying more belligerent things. A lot of people don't trust that he means them, but he's saying more belligerent things you could ever imagine. Why? Because he's trying to placate the right rather than the left. Like,
Hmm.
that's not normal. Like, and DeSantis is basically king of Florida. He's got over $100 million in the bank. He's belligerent as hell. People are moving there every day. You can't find luxury housing in South Florida, like tripling prices in the last year or two. So so here's all that won't matter unless there is a vision of the future and what it could be like here and now. And what I call that is resettling uh, America, resettling and refounding our civilization and our culture, renewing an American way of life worthy of the name. And there, I think, is where the bold vision needs to come into play. What does that look like? Well, you got to think about what are the things that make you happy. And some of the things I was just mentioning, right? Meaningful work, community engagement, marriage and family, and church going, right? Those are like common social science markers. As some friends of mine have pointed out, where can you do that? Where can you do that? Where you really can live this way? We need to experiment again. We have a frontier right here. We have a digital frontier and we have a geographic frontier. When you think about what's possible, and what's possible is go. What if a bunch of people move to a Texas county, right, that has 500 people in it, and decided we're going to have a decent way of life. We're going to have remote work. We're going to have some businesses that are going to move in with us. We're all going to move at the same time. Or someone buys the land, we SPAC a city, right? And they say, we're going to give this out to people. If you're here a certain amount of time, you won't have to pay taxes, whatever it is. There's a lot of ways that you could rethink what communal life looks like within the United States now, in the right states, if you had the vision.
Yeah. Do you think kind of the grip on power, from the federal level is loosening enough to allow this? I mean, is there, you can have localism, but do you think there's a risk that, they're just going to be just sweeping, attempts at squashing it, or is just the energy draining out of the central behemoth as it is growing at the periphery?
Yeah, that's a good question too. I mean, who knows? I think my it's hard to say because this is still the most powerful institutions controlled by the other side in the nation, and that's just the way it is. On the other hand, they're clearly white knuckling it, like grasping in a way, like increasingly intolerant of this sort of thing. So, but what I would say is that I guess I think more practically, even within the bounds of the law and what's possible now, there's still lots of room to build lots of things. We just don't have the leaders in place yet. And it's a race to build those things and to become those leaders. So there's no reason. I mean, Musk shows the way here, right? There's a lot of other rich people in the world who are CEOs. Like no one else can do this. No one else can figure out like they can get involved in these battles and it doesn't hurt them. That's moving everything in a good direction. But also when you think of movements to live a different way of life, look, I think people are fascinated and very interested in different kinds of architecture. Why aren't we using the state of Texas to build like micro communities and mega cities and things people haven't dreamed of? We can do that here. What the missing element is not the talent, innovation, and kind of technocracy. We have too much of that. The reason what you need are people who actually have a substantial reason, who actually practically want to live a certain way of life. And I think that's what's lacking, right? You have to actually want to do that, and that is political and theological. The reasons that people want to do that, and they have to see that there's a need for something new. In other words, like the Puritans have to realize there's somewhere else they can go. They have to go somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
I'm just saying we're still at the point where we can do that here, right? In other words, Mormons and Jews, right? Like half the country in America, or at least 40%, basically wants to act like that together.
Yeah.
And there's an organizational problem to making it happen, but it's not as if they've shut everything down and this movement has just started. Does that make sense? I mean, it's like a commercial cultural movement. It doesn't have a name, but it's real.
Yeah, yeah, it's what people call the vibe shift, and it's coming. And I think there's also kind of this component that there's a these preference cascades that start at the top. People say Twitter isn't real life, but there is, you know, like you mentioned, Thiel, Andreessen, Musk. These are some of the most powerful people. Even Jeff Bezos, commented positively on that Vanity Fair article, which is kind of strange. And it was like, oh, very, very nice and fair, and he's obviously he owns the Washington Post, so he's obviously kind of a woke impresario of sorts. But still, things are changing. Like it's not extremely low status to be talking about these ideas. And I feel like, things started shifting slightly with Jordan Peterson, where kind of religion became acceptable to be discussed by
Mhm.
smart people. And then there was a little bit of a cascade in that direction, kind of a thousand flowers bloomed in the discourse world after Jordan Peterson. And
Mhm.
now you see it's kind of trickling in from above, like the it's allowed to be high status. You can still be high status, and even in some of the most high status rooms in the world, while holding these ideas, and that is very powerful, and it can happen very fast. So, I mean, that's kind of my hope. Uh, from someone who I do believe kind of in the late theory, I do think things start at the top and then they do trickle down, and people do want to imitate these meme plexes if they're high status enough. So yeah, it's interesting. It's a good. I feel like it's a good time, but also, like you said, these are hugely powerful institutions. Who knows what the knee jerk reaction is going to be, and how much powder they still have in their pockets.
Well, we have to find out, and the only way to find out is by pushing to the max what's possible that can actually practically be done now. And you if you don't have this is what I've come to. And look, I haven't come to this from if I wanted to make money, like I would have to be really dumb given my trajectory. I really wanted to be in education. I wanted to build educational institutions. I saw that as because I saw that as powerful. I saw that as what shapes things. I was very interested in politics in ways that consulting make money, but it was like about moving the dial. And now I'm not libertarian. I never even read the book, but right now, if we don't have a revenue generating entities like working together as a movement, it's over. If you don't have, there is no neutrality. And if you don't have revenue generating entities of various kinds trying to build a practical way of life that, of course, involves products and services, but it's based around a vision of how human life should be that reorganizes the entire way in which you sell products and services, right? If you have a vision of what this way of life should look like, and I believe there is a broad-based coalition of people who are very interested in it, and that's why this religion thing is all of a sudden like not low status anymore. Um, then it's possible to win. If you don't have that, if you don't have basically an economy within an economy, um, it doesn't matter like separation, no separation, it's over. There's no
Yeah.
separation. So I mean, right now it's like the opposite of the Civil War. Civil War in America, you had two economies. I mean, it was one economy, but there were basically two economies. Those are at odds, and you actually, it's almost like it developed the theory over time, especially in the South, um, on that basis. Right? They weren't very philosophical about it at first, but they developed a philosophy over time, and so you got this radical divide over the fundamentals. Um, and right now, it's almost the opposite. The radical divide is already there over the fundamentals. What wants to separate out is the economy and culture. And so, by all means, like we must separate it out. And if we're successful, that becomes powerful enough to basically retake the country or transform the country, refound the country after the left has already refounded it. Or if there was a separation, like that would make it possible. But if without that, it's not possible. And that to me is the clincher. Like people can talk, they can write op-eds all they want. That's wonderful. It's great. And there is, I believe in elite theory as well. I mean, those ideas can be, but at the end of the day, like either you have this movement or you don't. And if you don't have this movement, you are done. And that is the fundamental fact. You don't have an economy within an economy, a kind of culture within a culture. You don't have a bold vision, positive vision that isn't just I'm anti-wokeness of what this life should be like and what we can actually do about it here and now. Then this is all just talk. Does that make sense? That's what I've
Yeah.
come to. I mean, and I've come to that through the school Hard Knocks.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that's the main divide and kind of the point where we depart from the IDW as well. We are kind of the side of people who maybe we don't necessarily share the same values, but we know that a set of values that is fixed,
Mm,
not updating, not progressing, not adding. Pretty much, call it I don't know, natural law or whatever you want to call it. But we believe that that is something that should be at the foundation of our civilization, and it is not. So then you have the people who essentially that's kind of what the IDW still believes. They are progressives, but they really don't like wokeness. Well, there's a much bigger distance between us and the IDW than there is between wokeness and them. So that's kind of where the we're always part, and they've parted a long time ago. Unfortunately, that's
yeah.
the question of a lot of streams and a lot of podcasts, but it's true.
No, that's so. This goes back to the point you made about religion. I think this is really important what you're saying, and it really needs to be emphasized more. Um, so the IDW types, like you can see them, they still kind of think like religion is low status, right? That's not
Yeah, of
science.
course.
Science, technology, and they still hold to this. I My suspicion is now that it's just because it's more intellectual in a way than some of the doers we were talking about who have money and have high status or are great. So let's play that out a little bit. I mean, the IDW is still stuck in this paradigm of which is most of these people's fancy education, where they're just ignorant. Like they have no conception of the beauty and thought of some of the greatest minds in thousands of years of history, and they have no they're like primitive savages when it comes to an actual real education, and they just all STEM, and that doesn't tell you anything about how to use it or what to build. And I think that's actually the problem of innovation being stifled, right? Is that the reason we don't even know what to do with it. Like, and that's the problem with Andreessen's. Like, it doesn't go far enough. A time to build. Build what? For what? There's a reason people build beautiful, big, beautiful things. A lot of them are called temples, right?
Mhm.
And there's a reason. Political ideals that allow people to. So anyway, they don't have any conception of it, and it's I don't think it's very complicated. Like, it's because they never read the books. Or if they did, it was like, this is a historical blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, I guess I'll do that as a hobby. I'll read the history of, like, have you ever read St. Augustine? Like, you've never read the Confessions? You don't even know what some of the greatest minds have said about these things. You don't even know that there are obviously different ways to access the truth, other than the hypothesis, the scientific method. Do you even realize where the word science comes from? right? Which is knowledge, that science, yeah, that was describing something that encompassed your scientific knowledge, right? But there's other ways to access the truth, and we all use them every day. And there's some people who've thought very deeply about this over the last thousands of years and argued about stuff that's off the table for these people. And it's not their, in a way, it's not their fault, right? They've never even experienced, they have no access to that. And so I think that what's happening, and I don't know. I mean, I want to hear what you think what's happening here. I think what's happening with religion is that there are people who realize, like Musk when he was on Babylon Bee, it was really remarkable to me. At the end, they do the whole Protestant thing, and it cracked me up. Like, we have to ask you if you will invite the Lord Jesus Christ into your heart as your Savior or whatever at the end. And Musk, to his credit, he's like, got stop. I mean, he took it seriously, right? I mean, he's like, well, I mean, okay, Jesus, and he starts talking. To me, it looked like he wanted to talk longer. Like, he wasn't. He was not. He took that seriously because he's realized that this other stuff isn't serious, and these are serious questions. And I think part of what's driving that is that they're seeing the breakdown and the emptiness of the purely technocratic society, and they see that even self-interestedly is like destroying the possibility of going to Mars or creating the kinds of things they want to create, and it's breaking down civilization. So it's almost like practical elite people who recognize something about natural virtue are realizing, oh my gosh, we want to go back. That Christianity at least encourages some of these good virtues, and there's some serious questions here that we didn't answer, and clearly that's not enough. Look at what's happening with civilization. So I think something like that is what is creating this shift. And let me just say one more thing. I mean, what's interesting is this is what made America different in the beginning, was that the modern type minds who were here, like say your Thomas Jeffersons, right, who are not, definitely not like a Christian. He still thought that Christ was the greatest moral teacher, and the reason he got rid of the miracles in the Bible, he's like, well, that's irrational. But he's still, why is he doing that? Why is he painstakingly going through the New Testament? I wish I had an elite today who would actually read the New Testament closely enough to get rid of the miracles. It's because he thought that the moral teaching was sound. And so he thought like there was basically he believed in a kind of natural virtue that he thought overlapped with Christianity, even if, he didn't believe in revelation. That overlap, right, with elites and Christianity is what made the founding, I think, good at all. Like, that made it possible to create something that was different, that was interesting, and allowed it to survive. And that's what we kind of see now. Like, I think that still exists. It always has existed, right? It's the reason that it's Christians that save the writings of Cicero, right, or Aristotle. I mean, because there's a reason in Revelation thing, where you can say, well, I don't know about Revelation and the mystery, although I'm drawn to it oddly because I realized that science doesn't actually explain everything. But there's like a practical natural virtue that overlaps. Is that I mean, as all
Yeah,
over the
no.
place, but that's my take on, I think, what's naturally where we're shifting back to. And I think what we have seen is actually really unnatural and can't last very long, where you say, oh no, we're an atheistic secular society that believes in science. Like, A, that's BS. Half of you are, got all kinds of spiritual beliefs. But if you get rid of Christianity, you're going to get back to some kind of, sex cults and little deities and things you worship. And it's normal. Like, that's normal in human society without Christianity.
Yeah, I mean, the golden calf in many ways and in many flavors, especially now because technology allows us to each have our own golden calf, which is quite the innovation, and congregate with people across the world who worship the same Moloch or whatever type
Yeah.
of demon you want.
Yeah. That's good.
So it's I think you're spot on, and I feel like the new elites, the Silicon Valley elites, have now, or like in the last few years, started to have intimate knowledge of the consequences of what wokeness is at their door. I think it was easy to ignore. before it became a problem, before it affected the bottom line in the way it does, before they had to jump through the wokeness hoops in hiring, before they actually had to put out the product, ship their code, or make their rockets. And that's kind of the negative vision that's been knocking at their door. And I think these guys are what, like 40, 50, some bordering 60. They've probably reached the first mountain and look down, and the gaping abyss is opening in front of them, and time to build, but what for? That question
Mhm.
rings deeply in the mind of many. So I think the positive vision, and the flirting with religion and all of this stuff comes from that as well. So I think we're well placed to have a revival at the level of the elites, just because it's just to be expected from. And also, like you said, the our relationship with science has reached a certain mature point now, especially after COVID. I mean, it's impossible to patch up the momentous failures, and it's just like we have physical knowledge of the disasters that they've done, like lab leak, like COVID was man-made. I'm sorry, people. Yeah, take this off the air, but I think this is pretty much common knowledge now. And then the vaccines, I mean, vaccine injuries, and there's a lot of problems that stem from science, from the god emperor science. And people see them physically in the day to day. Up until this point, computers are a day to day miracle. Love my microwave, wonderful, only miracles. But in the last few years, they've taken it down a few notches, and I think people are starting to realize that, okay, if this is the only way to access reality, oh,
Mhm.
it's got problems, and the
Mhm.
people, the high priests themselves have problems. So yeah, I think there's disillusionment with all of these things at many levels, and happy that's happening at the elite level as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's what's most promising to me. And let me say, another thing that's kind of sustained me is, you get these figures at the top. I mean, you're talking about, Mark Andreessen and Elon and Peter Thiel. These are people who are very interesting human beings. They're different than the rest of a lot of the clowns who, roam about that world. But let me say this. I mean, my where I come in, and where new founding comes in, and kind of what we're doing in media, tech, and finance, is the fact that there are people who contact me all the time and have for the last few years, which has inspired me to do this, who are in media, tech, and finance, who want to get out. And I mean, I tell you, like the based finance bros, who are like Gen Xers who are in finance, like they're the ones who, there's like one for every 10, but they're the ones who, like, hey, I was reading the American Mind, or I really like your tweets. Yeah, I think it's all going to fall apart too. And at first, I was kind of like, great, we're we're all going to die. But I was like, yeah, confirmation. And then I started to realize that a lot of these people are stuck, and it's easy if you're commenting, but when you're in that situation, even if you are incredibly wealthy, for instance, too, your money is tied to the system. So all of a sudden, you could be managing billions of dollars. You could be, uh, someone who just is known in media and very talented and makes a great living. You're stuck either way, right? Because you can't just announce and put out a press release like, I hate the wokeness and I'm joining this other thing. The other thing doesn't exist. And there's no, so what I find is there's a lot of talented people. This is why it's a historic moment, and this is what we have to take advantage of. And why am I doing it? Because it needs to be friggin' done. So all these people, they want to get out now. They're willing to take a pay cut, right? They're willing to move. In fact, a lot of them want to move. And what you'll hear is, I'm going to be fired in the next year or year and a half or 2 years, or I don't know when I'm going to have to quit out of principle, right? They're not cowards. They're just not insane. They're not suicidal. So they want a way out, and but they need to make some money. They're willing to take a pay cut. They need to make some money, and they need to work with people of equal talent, right? They don't want to just work for some grift or some podunk thing. And a lot of them aren't necessarily executives, or entrepreneurs, right? So it's like they're really talented at something, but they want to come into a larger team. They can't just go out on their own. So this is the kind of stuff that we exist to create. I mean, there needs to be a private equity fund that's looking for medium-sized businesses that will reach Red State America Plus. There needs to be it's actually investing in the supply chain, right? That's looking for obstacles and opportunities there. There needs to be a large-scale movement where people can, move millions of dollars out of woke capital's grasp, and that's something that millions of people want, and a lot of talented people want to make happen. They have to be brought together to work together to make that happen. So this movement already exists; it's already latent, and that's elite. And I think what you're describing is very much fits these other people who are, the worker bees at elite level. They're absolutely like ready, and they a friend of mine called it. They see some of them are religious, but others aren't. But they see something like civilizational health is a phrase I like, right? And you just see like this is not a healthy civilization because they're in a perch where they can see, better than many a suit on Twitter, although some of them are the suits on Twitter, where things are. And so it's to me it's like how do we just get since I've already planted the flag, since I'm already pre-canceled, that actually gives me an advantage in a weird way, right? That's my brand really. It's like you already know where I'm at politically. I've already been called a fascist in print, right? Let's get over that. But now we're going to find the talented people and put them together and help foster this movement. And that's I think that's very hopeful. And um, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. But I guess my hopeful bit is just like, look, I talk to these people all the time and they exist and they want to do this. They want to get out and build something new.
Yeah, most people, wouldn't necessarily want to take a pay cut in their normal lives, but when you add, the element of civilizational health and also seeing the negative vision all around you, it's extra incentives, and I think a lot of people underestimate um, how easy it is. I mean, it's not easy, but it's doable to actually pivot to something where if you're a relatively smart person with energetic, there are places where you can have an income that doesn't depend on selling your soul every day or worshiping whatever demons that they have you worship at the diversity seminar or whatever. So yeah, I mean that's yeah, I think that's really hopeful. And another really hopeful thing is like the most hopeful people that I've had on the show were two guys from South Africa, who essentially said that they love the fact that even though civilization is crumbling around them, they have a kind of a heroic mission. It's a very animating thing. It's I think it's
Yes.
it's underestimated how important this is. But yeah, to them it's like I wouldn't have it any other way.
No, it's so true. I mean, meaningful work, right? I mean, this is what we've taken away from everyone. By the way, we've taken away because you take away a notion of the common good, and you take away the connection of everyone's work to something that is meaningful. And some of the most meaningful stuff is just building physical things for people, like without which they can't live. Why don't we dignify work and no matter what the work is, it can always be dignified in some way. But here, we're in a time when yeah, if you see things are as bad as I do, you know that something has to be done, and this is therefore a noble calling, and you're trying to do good for real. And here's where the right always got it wrong, right? The social justice stuff was always going to work because everyone wants to be part of meaningful work. So if you can't define that in a good way, you're going to find some way to define it. That's why the wokeness isn't going to go away. It doesn't necessarily mean you go broke yet, because it plays off of this desire to be part of something greater than yourself, to not just live a materialistic life, but to do good, right? And that's natural. And so the response to that isn't neutrality; it's that there's no neutrality, but that it's that there is a more human way of life, an actual good way of life that we can stake out, and we can plant that flag in the here and now. As bad as things are, things can get a lot worse, probably will, but you can live a meaningful life in the midst of that, a life where you are actually happy and fulfilled, and happiness and fulfillment come from these kind of basic things that people have been able to find in the midst of terrible trying circumstances far beyond where we are now. So I think you're exactly right, and this is what needs to be. People need to be inspired. Like we can do this. We can do this now. Like we already see threatening to break out this kind of commercial cultural movement of people where there's all kinds of people want these kinds of things I'm talking about, and so it's up to us to kind of tap the well, right? Once it starts flowing. So the way I put it is like, say, take media, right? As an example, I think people are more familiar with or understand intuitively. Everyone knows that people in Hollywood are not happy, right? I mean, even your typical lib producer right now, who's not exactly woke, but it is, a typical Me Too problem, normal lib producer. This is someone who do they like what's going on? No, they're sitting there in their heart of hearts, going, "My God, when will this be over? It's got to end soon, right? At some point, it's not going to be like this the rest of my life." Everyone is unhappy. And so a lot of those people are so ideological and terrible, like whatever, right? But there's some of them who are already moving to Texas or whatever and trying to build new things. As soon as someone creates something that's just basically non-cringe, right? That shows the potential to generate revenue. That, if you, for instance, made 3 movies in one company that were somewhat successful, a ton of people would come out. It's the same thing in finance. It's like, let's have a race. Let's see who can build the funds, right, to get people's money the hell out of all these large financial institutions. It's the same. It's the same thing in technology, right? I mean, millions of people want to move to Parlor, which kind of sucked, like as a product. But millions of people, there's no ads. They all just moved as a reaction because of the election. Like grandma and grandpa are moving from Facebook. That rarely happens in business, right? And that desire is still there. That was years ago now. So again, I don't really like, win or lose. This is what needs to be done anyway. So that's my job. Like, not everyone's going to think that way, but this is what sitting there, this opportunity, and there's a lot of talented people who would rally. But I guess what I'm describing is that they need the vision. They need someone to plant the flag of the vision and to start talking about it. And this is what we all need to hash out and talk about more, and dare each other more to think about what could be here and now.
Yeah, and step away from the framing of the left, like the whole, who's a real racist and all this type of stuff. This is, we have to not engage in those conversations anymore. You
Uh,
know, who cares?
uh,
So, yeah, I think that's and this is what you're doing at New Founding, and you also have the Align newsletter. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll reveal more than I have publicly so far right here, because this is the only place to talk about these things is on interesting media outlets, as opposed to some of the others who have been poking around. So new founding is one of the interesting things. I mean, media, tech, and finance, but that's to foster a movement, and then there's internal things we want to do with each of them. So in terms of media, I want to create a men's lifestyle, women's lifestyle digital media brand. And then we've already created Return.life, which I really encourage, if you're listening, to check out Return.life. James Polis has kind of limbed out a vision for how we use technology and talk about technology in a more interesting way than all the other publications out there. And that Return.life is a community. I mean, we're having launch parties, people in tech. These are people who want to build interesting things, who want technology to serve humanity rather than be enslaved by it, which I believed was what the original vision of Silicon Valley was. Return.life is kind of really exciting. It's more boutique and elite in a way, but that's going to grow in some interesting ways. And that's, how do I live with technology? Men's and women's is, how do I live as a man? How do I live as a woman in the midst of this morass? And there, it's really about, again, framing a movement that already exists. Like, you're part of a movement in probably multiple facets here. And why don't we show that, right, as a brand? And that's what we need to do media wise. So you got Return, the men's and women's named Return.life, and then Align. And Align is the more commercial. So Align is right now it's just a newsletter, but it's a fast growing newsletter with a lot of people reading it. Comes out once a week, 700 some words. It just talks about, say, fitness stuff or furniture, things that you want to buy, and gives you non-woke alternatives, or at least better alternatives to the crazy, big corporate woke brands. And it's free. We're not making money on that now in any way. That's something we're building towards, though. what we want to do is become your kind of Costco. You're like, we want to go out and procure for people and evaluate for people these businesses. I care more about that than anything else, and become a trusted voice. Like if we find someone has gone woke, or some company, kind of violates what people want, we get rid of them and we find someone else. So right now, though, Align is just a free newsletter. Joinalign.us. Joinalign.us. You go there, you sign up, and you just get a newsletter every week that outlines out in a positive way, right? We talk about negative things, but only if we go to a positive, a positive way, assuming we assume that there's a broad coalition of people who have the same view of what's positive and good, because there are who disagree with all this ugliness and this garbage. And you say, okay, well, what do I buy, right? In order to help me live that way of life, and what can I buy that's not made by slaves in China? Sometimes, sometimes that's impossible. Like sometimes it is Chinese, but they purchase their stuff in China. Their headquarters are in America, but they are active. They are not woke, right? They don't say any of that stuff. Okay, well that's something, right? That moving in that direction is obviously something a lot of people want to do. I don't want to rush it. I want to do something that provides value to people, and then become that brand, that media brand becomes a trusted voice that then can help people with products and services. So, like for instance, if I got 10 medium-sized companies that we think are like, we know the CEOs, we think are sound, and they can send stuff to your house every month, like things that you subscribe to, I'd bundle a subscription, right, to our people and say, here's a deal for you. It's in the business's interest because they don't have that kind of publicity. And we'll say, look, go with them over these big dogs. And that's the only way to win ultimately. Channel millions of dollars away, because there's a lot of things you should do. Like government should in some ways crack down on them. There's all kinds of things that could be done to big corporate and woke capital. But at the end of the day, like what I want to do is actually hurt them the hardest. And how do you do that? You take away their money, right? You say Coca-Cola would notice if a regional distributor would notice if there was a regional drink, right, soft drink that was clearly going off non-woke in a competitive way. You take a $10 million company and make it a $50 million company, and competitors will friggin' notice. That's what we need to do. This is economic war, and so that's difficult to do though, because it has to be done as not a grift. It needs to be it needs to be done in a way where you're really providing value. You're gathering talented people who have experience in different aspects of it, and you're putting something together in a solid way. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's I haven't even practiced this spiel.
No, it's a good feel. I like the fact that, I can tell you're animated by it. I can tell it is not a grift, which is always a challenge in the space, because we both said there's energy in the space, there are great ideas, there's a lot of people who just speak about things that are true and beautiful, and it's exciting. And this is what animated me to create this podcast as well. And I know that some people see it, oh, she's just sucking energy out of this, this succubus woman out
Mhm.
in the sticks in Romania, trying to, I don't know, divert the energy. Yes, I guess, I don't know. It's something that people are noticing, and I think it's a good thing. And even if you're called a grifter, it doesn't matter. It's part of
Yeah.
the yeah, it's part of just participating in this thing that we all find beautiful. So I think everyone kind of deals with this accusation in spaces like this. This is not the first movement that's been in the in the same life cycle.
Yeah, I mean, I like to say, it's like I every day, especially when I was more doing the American Mind stuff and creating that. It's like I would hear someone's a Fed, someone's a Nazi, someone's a grifter, uh, you know, often the same person, right? I mean, Fed or Nazi, like, I mean, I mean, eventually it's like you just tune it all out. I mean, I think there's a lot of like weird subgroup stuff that goes on anytime you have kind of intellectual ferment or transitional change where old outdated frameworks fall. And so I think what's important, to survive is exactly, you just got to do your thing and go on. Like I don't pay attention to that, but I think what is important um, that you don't take shortcuts in some of this, where there is a lot of energy, so it is temptation sometimes to take shortcuts. Sometimes that's okay. Sometimes it's not. But we need to think, big. This is about refounding a civilizational decline. Civilization, and that is as big as we should think, because that is what needs to happen. And whether or not we can accomplish that doesn't change the fact that it needs to be done.
Yeah, yeah, that's a I like to, we'll leave it at that. I think that's a good way to summarize, yeah, what needs to happen, if it isn't us, if it's whoever, but it needs to happen. I also want to ask you the question of the show. No one gets away without answering the question of the show, which is, do you have a subversive thinker you think is underrated? People should check out, someone maybe influential in your thinking.
It's a tough question because I find that here's my problem with it is that I don't like the game of I know about the super cool, have you ever read? I mean, it's fun, right?
Of course, that's why I asked the question.
Do you even know about this person? Um,
Name 5 albums.
uh, yeah. Do you know about this super cool band? And I don't. I mean, I think I think I will, because I'm rebelling double, triple cross. I will say this book, Normie Thomism, The Intellectual Life, book by a priest named Sertillanges. Do you know this book?
No.
So it's Sertillanges, I think. It's called The Intellectual Life. It's short, and it's like I don't know, sort of like Thomist Jordan Peterson. I mean, he's just describing kind of in a spiritual way for everybody what you would have to do to carve out an intellectual life. And it's completely subversive to the entire technocratic mindset.
Okay.
Uh,
Very interesting.
and it's somewhat practical, and it's just kind of like it calms you when you read it. It's like this wise kind of wise, this old wise man telling you how to carve out intellectual life for yourself in the midst of the madness, and how to value contemplation of the truth as you can, and how to do that, how to try to do that in a way that becomes habitual. And that I find is subversive, because it's the opposite, right, of everything that everyone around you wants you to do, because you have to be, doing all this, quote unquote practical stuff, running this race with forgetting about what makes all of civilization possible, which is a seeking and a habitual seeking of what's actually true, and trying to just to behold, to see what's truly beautiful. The problem is, like, that's a bold statement. It's a noble thing to say, but what this, I guess he was a priest, lays out in the intellectual life is a practical way to try to do that in your own life.
Yeah, no, that sounds really interesting. Yeah, definitely subversive. Definitely has not been mentioned before. I think you've completely fit the bill. uh,
All right.
yeah, I want to thank you again, Matt. This has been awesome. It's been a long time coming. I do want to point people to the American Mind, wonderful publication. I've been published in there. I've also been published on Return.life. One of the first
Yes.
essays there.
Super.
It's a lovely publication. And also check out the Align newsletter and New Founding, depending on what projects pop up there. I know there's a website. It's still a little bit mysterious, but I'm sure there are going to be more things popping out of this project as well. So thank you so much, Matt. It was lovely to chat to you.
Thank you. Yeah, a long time coming. I'm glad we were finally able to do it, and it's just a pleasure.